Moms for Liberty really worked miracles.
We have a crisis in America in public education. This is the future of our kids and our country.
You are joyful warriors.
And we are just getting started. Yeah. And we have a new superintendent. Oh. Hi, welcome to the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. This is a weekly podcast. We go live on all social platforms every Wednesday morning, and we bring to you moms and dads from the front line that are out there fighting this culture war. And today we have a super special guest with us. She is an honest, true, real, live public school teacher for the last 24 years, but she is also a chapter chair of Howard County, Indiana, Moms for Liberty chapter. And you can be both, believe it or not. And also Paula Davis, that is her name, is our 2024 award, Abigail Adams Award for holding leaders accountable. She was awarded that last year at our national summit. And so before we hear from a real live public school teacher and chapter chair, we're going to play this video that we played the night that we gave her the award last year.
My name is Paula Davis, and I'm the mom of 3 school-aged children, the chapter chair of Moms for Liberty, representing the 9 chapters in Indiana, and an educator.
Paula, you so deserve this award. I also have a front row seat to what you do, and just everything you do is about someone else. You are just a force to be reckoned with, and I'm so thankful that you found Moms for Liberty.
My mom is the strongest person I know, and she fights for what she believes in. If something goes against the Constitution, then my mom will stick up for anything.
You're kind of you're basically unstoppable, and you didn't come to play. You came to make a difference and make a change.
Paula Davis, you are the forefront of what's going on in the issues of education and parental rights. Paula is not afraid to have a hard conversation, even if it means putting her job on the line. You are the epitome of a joyful warrior, and you are the most deserving of the Abigail Adams Award.
She is such a servant leader. I am just so proud of who she is and what she represents. She is such an advocate for education, but also an advocate for parental rights. And the two really, truly do go hand in hand. One of my favorite qualities that she exemplifies is a bold and courageous spirit, just like Abigail Adams. You are definitely changing the world with your bold and courageous spirit.
So Paula Davis, chapter chair from Howard County, Indiana. We just watched your video from last year, and I saw you get teary-eyed.
I did. I think the reason I got teary-eyed was because I listened to my daughter talk about her mom and the importance of how she's watching me. Right. And it's not just her, all of my children, they're watching us. So they're taking their lead from us. And that hearing her talk about what she's watched me do, I hope I've set that example for her of what it means to stand up for what you believe. And so watching that video, but then also hearing my husband support that, hearing our executive board, which, by the way, I have an amazing executive board. I just want to give them a shout out because I think so often, I might be the face of our chapter coming here for chapter chair, but at the end of the day, it's a community effort, and it's an effort that's put with all of us. All of us work together to make those things happen. So I do want to give a shout out to my executive board because they are amazing.
Oh, yeah, you can't. We do have people that are leading chapters somewhat solo sometimes, I feel like, but the strongest chapters have a team that's working together for sure. Yeah. But I think that part of your award video when your daughter, there was a lot of tears when so many of us, your kids get mad at you for standing up, and you're embarrassing them by going to school board meetings and talking to their teacher and making them opt out of things. And so to hear your child, you didn't even have to know you or your daughter, but to just hear a child stand up for their parent like that, it was really really a beautiful moment.
It was. It was. Yeah.
So did you know you were getting the Abigail Adams Award that night?
I did not. I knew that I obviously had been nominated for that. But I always felt like there's so many other moms and so many other chapter chairs that are so deserving of those awards. And so it was a complete surprise.
That's so fun.
Which was, I think, and then I didn't know that the video would be there either. So not only to see that award, but then, receive that award, but then also to watch that video and all of the people and things that have transpired over the last couple of years was just kind of a culmination of the hard work that we've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was fun. So this is our third year doing the summit and the awards. And every year we reevaluate, like, are they doing what they're supposed to? Are we recognizing the right types of people? Is this process working well? And last year, we actually were thinking of notifying the awardees in advance so they could come prepared, maybe with a speech. But I was like, no, I just don't want to. It's so much more fun to surprise you guys. But then I wonder if it's leaked to you guys, especially when we're in like asking your family members, and we don't know who they are, and so we got to find one person on your team that we can trust that will ask your family or whomever to contribute. And so I love that
not leaked.
I love that it was not leaked.
It was not leaked. It was a total surprise.
So I imagine that video was pretty powerful for you that night. It was so fun for you to receive that. You have worked so hard. You have been with us from very early on in the beginning. And your family supports you. And as we opened this up, we talked a little bit about, or I mentioned that you've been a public school teacher for 24 years. And so one of the things Moms for Liberty gets accused of all the time is we're trying to destroy education. We hate public education, which is not true.
No.
All of the founders of this organization and all of us that started in the first few days of it were all either on the school board or teacher, everybody, like, we were so concerned and still are about public education. And so I just want to talk a little bit about what that is like for you, because you're not just a public school teacher.
Correct.
You're a public school teacher in the same district where your children go to school.
Correct.
And where you are the chapter chair of one of the most hated organizations in the country, as according to many teachers. So what's that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I am the chapter chair in the county that I live in, obviously, and that's also the same county that my children attend school in, and the same district with which I work for. And I will say that at first was a little intimidating. Do I go forward with this when I felt like I needed to, I guess, look at Moms for Liberty? I knew I was taking a risk. I knew that I was kind of putting myself out there. And I don't know if you want me to tell about that yet, or
no, we can talk about that in a minute.
Okay. So it's a little intimidating.
What's it like with the other teachers? Because we have a lot of teachers that are fans, but sometimes they're quiet fans.
Right.
and
I will say I've heard a lot from teachers that are like, I could never do that. I could never speak up. And I say, but why? If you know what's going on, don't you have a responsibility to speak up? I mean, you are there in the building, you see what's coming in, you see the curriculum, you see the lessons. Don't you have a responsibility if you know something is wrong?
Do they, though? And we're going to take a little veer off here for a second, because do they know? Because you and I had a conversation the other day, and even you said, I'd see this or I'd see that, but I didn't really understand how it was all connected. I didn't really understand that it was intentional. And I think parents feel the same way. The first lesson that came home from my now 24-year-old in 7th grade about Christopher Columbus being wanted, dead or alive, all these things, I was like, well, that seems weird, but I didn't connect the dots right away. It takes some time. And so do you feel like the teachers that you know and work with, are they really aware, or are they just like, oh, that's a little weird, but not worth saying anything about?
If you had asked me that question about 6-7 years ago, I would have said, no, the teachers didn't know. We didn't really understand what was behind some of the textbooks coming in. And, most of us veteran teachers, if we've been in the classroom for 25 years, our education at the university level was much different than what the kids who are in the teacher programs these days are receiving. So I would say 6-7 years ago, I would have said, no, I don't really understand, or I didn't understand the gravity of what was happening. We have a whole lot of information now, and it's in such a public eye that I don't know how a teacher could say they didn't know what's happening. I would challenge that. It's pretty blatant these days.
Okay. And so your relationship with the teachers you work with,
I have a fantastic group of teachers, and I know some of them are watching today. I texted them the link last night, so I know that some of them are watching. And so I have a fantastic relationship with the teachers that I work with. I will say that I do keep what I do as far as Moms for Liberty is on my own time. It is separate. It's not something
I tried to call you during the day before and you like, I don't get a call back till like 6 or 7 p.m. And you're like, sorry, I was at school. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. I forgot.
Emails, text messages, all those things. That's not part of my professional life during the day, during the school year. So I keep it very separate, but obviously teachers I work with, they know what I do. I also obviously
it's hard not to when you're showing up at school board meetings.
That was my next thing is when you go to a school board meeting and there are other staff that are at the school board meeting for other reasons and they hear you speak.
So how does that go down? Because, I've been a school board member and usually half the room, if it's a hot topic, is red for ed or, the red shirts are everywhere. Sure. I'm sure it's your district is the same, but there you are, lollygagging in a navy blue shirt, not a red shirt. And so that is everybody like you guys can set that aside and still have a good working professional relationship.
I think it's respected in the district that I work for. I would say that yes, it is respected that what I do on my private time is what I do on my private time. Not all the teachers are appreciative of what I do.
Of course not. You're going to have differences of opinions.
We've had some differences and some challenges there, but I think overall it is respected that that's my private time.
Okay. And so then your kids also go to school in the same district.
They do.
And what is your relationship with your kids' teachers?
And I would say that the relationship I have with my kids' teachers are very positive. I have one that just graduated, one in high school, and one that will be a freshman this year. And I would say that I have very good relationships with the teachers that my children have had. We've had along the years, we've had some bumps in the road. And my son, a couple years ago, he had two choices for novels for Spanish. One was Bianca's Coming Out, and the other one was
for Spanish class.
Yeah. Okay. And the other one was about illegal immigration from Guatemala. And my children, two of my children, are adopted from Guatemala, and so to have those two novels be the choices, those were not okay with us. And so I did go to the teacher. I did go to our principal, and it's in a respectful way. It's not in a rude way, but just saying this doesn't align with our family's values. We don't feel like these are appropriate, and it was respected. And then those novels were not used. So, and I appreciate
they weren't used
that.
At all in the classroom.
They weren't used
he
at
was
all.
Really for any of the students.
No.
Wow.
No. I think after reassessing what those were, the school made the decision that those were not appropriate, and it didn't need to be the two novels that were used to teach Spanish.
Honestly, that's the way it should always happen. You shouldn't have to bring it to the school board and make a public scene and then go to your state and get a law. Like all of that shouldn't have to happen. This really should all be handled at the most basic level.
Yes.
Always.
And that's what we try to do. We've set that as our that's the way we do things as a chapter, is that we will go to the school first, share our concern. If we don't get any results from the school, then we go to the superintendent and we work with the superintendent to say, did you know that this was in your school? And again, if we still do not get the outcome that we think we should get, that's when we take it to the school board. So we try to keep it private. There's a lot of stuff that's happened in our county that nobody really knows about, because we've given the schools an opportunity to remedy it before it gets to the point that we make it public. And our thing is, we're not trying to blast you on social media. We're not trying to make you guys feel horrible by bringing this to your attention. But what we are saying is this isn't appropriate, and we want to make sure we have a policy in place so it doesn't happen again, to protect our students. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the publicity, it's about protecting our kids.
And so you're in this for the right reasons. You're building the relationships. I'm not, I'm going to hail Paula here, but that tells me, you're not doing it to get gotchas and be in front of the camera and to get things to go viral. You are doing it because you're concerned about what's going on in schools and you're concerned about children. And that is the pure intent and the right reasons and the reasons Moms for Liberty was created. And you're doing it the right way and you're building relationships, which is one of our core values. And so thank you, Paula. Thank you. I think that's why your chapter has sustained for so long, why you have a strong leadership team with you, because you're doing it all for the right reasons. So
yeah. And I will say, I mean, even just as recently as May, we had a situation at a school district in our county where there was a book that was being used. It was sexually explicit content. And again, we haven't even released which district it was in our county because it really doesn't matter which district it was. What matters at the end of the day is the district came back and said, we agree that this book should not be used and it will no longer be used. End of story. Now, we did let our county, the people on our Facebook page know what had happened. But again, we haven't disclosed which district it is. And that's because it's not about which district it is. It's about there was something that needed to be addressed and we addressed it. And it's been taken care of.
Think about all the work that's being done across the country with our 320 chapters, all functioning hopefully in the same manner. You don't get notoriety for these small wins, but you're doing the good work. So wonderful. So grateful for you. So I do have a question though, because I think about you again, I think about you in this mom, teacher, activist role. And let's just hypothetically, and you don't even have to answer if you don't want to, hypothetically, I see two scenarios where it could be a struggle for you. One, you're at a professional development or your textbook's been handed to you or something that you are supposed to teach from, and it's wrong. It's inaccurate history, something of that nature. Is this something you handle in your professional job, or do you tuck it away and then say, tonight I'm going to show up as the activist and take care of this? How, at the school board meeting, how do you go about that?
So I work with my principal on that. I work with our staff on that if there's ever anything that's been questionable. And we sit down as a staff and I just say, here's the reasons why I think maybe this is not something that's appropriate. And that really hasn't happened too much in our district. Our district is very good about academics. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on the academics of our students and not the indoctrination. So I do work for a very good district. In that regard. But if there are questions, that's something that I privately address with, my superior. And I say, here's why I have some concerns about this. Let's unpack this. And if it goes against my morals and values, that's not something I'm going to have, then I'm not going to teach that.
So let's back up a little bit, because I didn't even give you a proper chance to introduce yourself. We just dug right in. What type of teacher? Who do you teach? What age group? What kind of teacher are you? Tell us a little bit more just about you.
So I teach special education. I've been a special education teacher since 1999.
Wow.
So I took 2 years off when we adopted our oldest two children. But other than that, I've been in the classroom in special education in some capacity, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school. I've taught every K through 12 grades. So,
what do you teach right now?
I teach middle school, 7th and 8th
middle
grade.
School special education. That sounds, I can't even, I subbed before I served on the school board. I wanted to get more familiar with our schools. And so I became a substitute teacher and I subbed all grades. I just wanted experience. I wanted to, live what I was about to lead. And I subbed 6th grade a couple times, but never, ever again. The last time I subbed 6th grade math, I got a kick me sign to put on my back. And at some point when I was writing on the board or something, the kids had, I don't know how they even did it. They had timers that they used in a basket. Someone got a hold of them and they set them all around the room and to go off at all at the same time. It was whatever, like middle school kids. These weren't even special needs kids.
No, I absolutely love middle school. I had gone from teaching high school to teaching middle school, and I wondered because I hadn't taught middle school before when I got put into this position.
It takes a special person.
I absolutely love it. I really do. I love middle school kids. And I love teaching students with special needs. And the reason is because so many times those are the students that are told that they're not able to do something. And what we're able to do is tell them, yes, you can. You can have your own success in your own way, and we can help you with that. And we don't have to accept anything less than your best. And so teaching special education has just, that has been something that I wanted to do from the time I was very young. I'd always wanted to be a teacher from about third grade. I knew that was what I wanted to do. And so, and I have 3 different licenses. It's all in one license, but I have a 1 through 6 elementary, so I can teach general education as well. I have serious emotional disabilities, K through 12, and then a mild interventions K through 12 license.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because you had told me at one point that you saw a change happening in special education, and going to our first national summit in 2022 in Tampa. Actually, let's take a break. Let's take a break for a second. We're going to come back to that in just a second. It's a very important discussion about what's happened to special education over the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years, maybe.
Sure.
But we're going to take a break. It's just a 1-minute break, and we are going to show you a little bit about National Summit. We hope you'll join us October 16th through the 18th, momsforliberty.org/summit25. I have started sending out all the invitations for speakers, and it's going to be a great lineup. It's growing every day. It's going to be at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando. I think you've been to every summit.
I have been to every summit, and I'm signed up for this one too.
Yeah, so let's just break for 1 minute, watch this video, and then we'll come back with Paula.
Elena, what state are you from?
New York.
Hawaii.
I'm from Texas, Washington. I have my kids actually with me to do the march.
Wherever I go, odds are there is a Moms for Liberty group or a whole tribe in the room sounding off loud and proud.
And you could see the passion here because it's about supporting kids.
Pledge to each other that we will live like men and women who are determined to remain free.
I'm for parental rights all the way.
Welcome back to the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. This is a show where we bring you warriors from the front lines, moms and dads that are fighting this culture war. And today we have Paula Davis. She is a 24-year public school teacher, currently teaching in middle school special education, and she is the chapter chair of Howard County, Indiana. And we are having a discussion right now about special education and some of the changes that you have seen happen over the last several years, and how being at our national summit in 2022, we had a good friend of mine on stage for a discussion about school safety and security, which is interesting that this led into you kind of seeing a change in special education. But Ryan Petty is a dad who lost his daughter in the Parkland massacre. And his friend wrote a book. Also, I don't know if you've read Why Meadow Died, whose daughter was also killed. And they addressed some of these things that they thought kind of led to what happened there. So tell me like what you saw and the connections there, and things that you might see happening, changing in special education right now in America.
Yeah. So I went to that summit, and to back up a little bit, I mean, the catalyst for maybe, asking to be part of Moms for Liberty and filling out the application to start a chapter, the catalyst was the whole masks and quarantine, right? So that was where it kind of started. I said, I'm not doing this for another year. And I went through that 21-22 school year with then fighting that, and we got through that. And then we went to Summit. And I went to the breakout sessions, and there were so many things that were being shared in those breakout sessions that I was like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. I mean, my eyes were just really opened up to, I guess, the reason behind why certain things such as restorative justice was coming into our schools, right? And so,
did you know it was restorative justice, or you just saw
didn't.
some things happening? Yeah, it didn't really have a name, probably.
Right.
Well, it probably had a name, but they didn't introduce it. Like, we're introducing restorative justice. They were just introducing policies and practices that you were like, wow, this is a little different than we've done things in the past. Is that would that be accurate?
Yes. And I haven't always taught at the same district. I've been at a couple different districts. So different districts did things differently. And so I had an opportunity to kind of observe what was happening in the other districts. And when I went to Summit and heard some of the things, I thought, yeah, that's why they were doing some of those things. And when Ryan Petty and the gentleman who wrote that book were starting to kind of talk about how certain students were kind of receiving IEPs under the guise of like an emotional disability and protecting some of those students in such a way. I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack there as to what can happen when you have a student with an IEP. There are some very good things that are put in place, right? Because we want to protect those students who truly don't understand the gravity of their actions. Mm-hmm. We have students who they don't know what they've done is wrong. And those are the students that law was intended to protect. But as Ryan shared and the other gentleman had shared, we now have students who are receiving those who they do understand the gravity of what they've done, but they're protected now. And so I started to, kind of think back, yeah, that is kind of what's happened over the last several years. And it's concerning that we're using IDEA 97, we're using an IEP to essentially protect students who do know what they've done.
Who are violating the law, sometimes
Correct.
criminals. In this case,
Correct.
obviously the most extreme, but because of the massacre, all of the details have been exposed to how many times they just moved him to a new school or covered up for him, or he didn't receive any punishment for some very scary behavior. And,
yes.
There was also a lot of other things, like I think the FBI was warned or, and they didn't do anything about it. And so, of course, every time a huge tragedy happens like that, there's always 14 layers of things that have happened that shouldn't have happened. But it was a big moment to uncover restorative justice and the pitfalls where it could lead and the problems with it. And so you didn't know it and you show up at Summit and at a minimum, your eyes are now open to look around and see when you get back to school and watch the practices.
Right. And I think as a special education teacher, my whole goal is to always protect our students, right? But then what I also have noticed too is that essentially special education has been hijacked and it's taking services away from students who truly need those services. And then our time is, split between.
Well, are you seeing, because I know in our district, we were seeing just a massive rise of students with 504s and IEPs.
Yes.
It's like everybody has a diagnosis now, and it helps get them all kinds of special treatments and allows them to get away with bad behaviors, it seems like. I mean, are you seeing more of that in general and across the board?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily in our district, but I will say just from working with other special education teachers, in my career, that's kind of been the conversation, especially on different boards that I'm part of, is that, you hear of students who are now not having consequences. That's for some people, they think that the IEP now makes it where the student doesn't get a consequence. Well, that's not really how that works. So we still have consequences for students, even if they have an IEP. Does it look differently? It might look differently. Okay. And we also have to take into consideration the disability. So, but my eyes definitely were open at Summit as to what I guess the goal was with some of this. And I mean, I think I even stood up at that one breakout and said, everything he's saying is true. And I mean, I thought
testimony meeting.
That was kind of like one of my first times of being bold when you talk about being bold, because I thought, this is not my area of comfort. I just want to be in my classroom with my students. I just want
Like
to
most
teach,
teachers, yeah. I would say
right?
most teachers are that way.
But I did stand up and say,
Have you always been bold? Because I just pause, because, we titled this episode Bold, and I hadn't watched your video in over a year. And when we just heard it and we heard your friends and your colleagues and your people on your board, because she was on your board,
she's
the
on
lady
our-
at the
yeah,
end there,
yes, she is.
she called you bold twice. And, your demeanor doesn't seem bold to me. You seem like you just kind of maybe just want to go along and teach and do the things, but people are describing you as bold over and over again. Have you always been bold, or is this something you found in recent years?
No, I think I've always been bold if I need to be. And that's what it is. When I feel so strongly convicted on something, then the boldness comes out.
What types of things? Like where's your line? What makes you go from, well, it's not that big of a deal, to bold?
Yeah, well, you come after my kids.
Yep.
And I'm going to be bold.
Hence Moms for Liberty, right?
Right.
That's what happened to
That was
moms
it.
all across the country.
That was it. Whether that's the pronouns, the books in the classroom, the masks, the quarantine. I mean, just everything that I started to see that was coming into our schools. And people will say, well, it's Indiana, it's conservative. That's not happening in Indiana. And actually, there was a gal on another board this week in Indiana that said, I don't know what you guys are talking about in Indiana. That doesn't happen here. And I said,
grief.
Yes, it does.
And it happens here in Florida.
Examples.
Yeah,
Yes.
It happens here in Florida. Our chapters are still active in Florida, still doing the work. And, we were leading the way on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's happening everywhere, parents. It's happening in your local school district. It's happening in your neighboring school district. It's in your state. It's in every state. It's everywhere.
It
and
is.
So you have to be awake. You have to be alert. Let's talk about your kids a little bit.
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
So I have 3 children.
You said 2 are from Guatemala just a minute ago.
2 adopted. And then we have a biological surprise, as we affectionately refer to her. So after 4 miscarriages, we adopted our 2 oldest children. Our oldest just graduated from high school. My middle he'll be a senior this year in high school. And then our youngest will be a freshman. And I absolutely adore all 3 of my children.
Boys, girls?
Girl, boy, girl.
Girl, boy, girl.
Yes.
And you brought 1 or 2 boy, 2, say that again.
2. Girl, boy, girl.
So 2 girls.
2 girls.
And if I recall, I saw you at the White House in February for the Title IX executive order signing by President Trump.
Yes.
And did you have 1 or 2 daughters there?
I had both of my girls with me, oh my goodness, what an absolute honor to get to do that with my girls.
Do they play sports?
They do. My oldest, she swam. In high school.
Did she get to meet Riley while she was there?
Both the girls got to meet Riley
gosh.
Gaines, which that was so exciting. And then our youngest plays soccer and runs track. And so, the Title IX, that was such a big thing last year. We really promoted that at our 4-H fair last year. We signed 134 members for Moms for Liberty last year at our county fair. And then to kind of have that come full circle with the signing of the executive order and being able to be there for that.
Yeah.
What an honor. And what an honor to share that with my girls, to be able to say, you matter, what you're doing matters in sports, and that nobody should be able to take that away from you.
I was there I was sitting in the back row and just kind of taking lay of the land that day during the executive order signing and watching all of you guys, all of our moms and their daughters on the risers behind President Trump. And I couldn't help but crying as I looked at you guys, because like we talked about just a few minutes ago, I know a lot of your stories, and I know that your kids are embarrassed of you. I don't know that your children have been, but most of them, I know there's been battles, Mom, stop, don't do it. It's embarrassing. Everybody's mad at me, all of these things. And then watching a couple of our moms up there, I could see them stand up straight. You're behind the president, fixing their bow and straightening out their shirts and just being moms while they were standing there behind the president of the United States as he signed an executive order to protect them in their spaces, whether it be a restroom, a locker room where they're changing, or while they're on their sports teams. And so I think about all the work you've been putting in, all the sacrifices, all the fear, We haven't even talked about that yet. Everything you've overcome to stand up for your daughters and all children, and then to have the opportunity to sit with the president. I'm so glad you had the opportunity to do that. And as breaking news, yesterday I was back at the White House, and Linda McMahon announced, we were there with Riley again, and Paula, who actually was on Leah Thomas's team. And they both spoke, again, crying. I don't know if I'm just getting older and weaker in my days, but I think I heard a lot of sniffling, so it wasn't just me. And we've heard Riley's story and we've heard Paula's story so many times, but they told it again yesterday with Secretary McMahon, as Secretary McMahon announced that University of Pennsylvania, which is where all this went down originally, is going to issue an individual apology to every girl who was harmed by having to change. I mean, Paula said 18 times a week she had to be naked in front of a naked man. And she told the story about trying to speak up, and the school silenced her and told her absolutely not. And teammates privately would complain and didn't want to do it, but publicly, oh, no, this is fine, because no one wanted to get thrown off the team, and no one wanted to be blacklisted because of it. And so the changes that you have made by standing up, like the things that have happened in this country for girls, So back to the breaking news yesterday, Secretary McMahon announced that University of Pennsylvania is going to have to issue those apologies to every single girl. They are going to strip Leah Thomas of his awards that he won for winning in girls' races. They're changing their policies completely, so girls will be protected and boys will not be competing in their sports or in their locker rooms or in their restrooms. And, that was forced upon them. And thank you for doing it, University of Pennsylvania, but it was forced upon them due to Secretary McMahon's actions and the threat of, taking federal funds away, and because of President Trump's executive order. And so,
and I will say too, that situation a couple of years ago, that forced me to have conversations with my girls that I never thought I would ever have to have. I had to have conversations with my daughter, who was a swimmer at the time, to say, if there's ever a boy in the locker room with you, you are to leave immediately. I had to have conversations about, if when you're on the track and you think that the person running next to you is a boy, you need to just stop. I mean, those are conversations I would have never thought I would have had to have with my girls.
It's crazy
but
times.
I did.
It's crazy times.
Isn't it?
In. Yeah, it really is. So I want to talk about the fear a little bit here. So the first time you spoke up, was at a school board meeting.
It was
in the district where you worked and where your children went to school.
Yes.
And were you just like, oh, I'm going to go down to the school board meeting and this isn't going to be a problem? Or how did that play out for you?
No, I drafted a speech, and it was in 2021, and it was against the masks and the quarantine and things like that.
So this is how you go from special ed teacher to bold activist.
Yes.
So 2021.
Yes. When you watch your kids come home so upset, so defeated, and, we'd made it to summer of 2021, and I just was sitting on my front porch. That's kind of my place, is where I find my refuge, and decided I that was where the bold part came out, because I thought, my kids aren't doing this again. We're not doing this. And so I decided I'm going to speak at the school board meeting, and I drafted a speech, and I told my husband that night, I said, I just want you to know that I could be losing my job tonight.
Did you really think you'd lose your job?
I didn't know. I hoped I didn't, because I love my job. I mean, I absolutely love my job. And it wasn't even that I was just standing up for my own children. I really felt like I was standing up for my students with special needs, with what they were doing. I mean, of all kids that do not need to be missing school for weeks at a time are students, right, with special needs. They need to be in the classroom. They need to have their education. And so my husband was so supportive. He said, you have to do what you have to do. And he said, we'll deal with it as it comes.
Behind every brave woman, there is a good man.
There is. He is. He's a good man, for sure. And And we walked in there. I think we're 6 or 7 of us that walked into that school board meeting. You know, we went in, but I was the only one who spoke that evening. And I made it very clear that I was speaking as the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty and as a parent of students who attended the school district.
Did you mention you were a teacher in the
I did
district?
not.
Okay.
But everybody knows it's a very small district.
Uh-huh.
It's a very small district. And so everybody knew. But I think that it was respected. I think we all were questioning at that point what was going on. But again, it took somebody had to be bold enough to just say what everybody else was thinking.
The 6 or 7 with you, were those other teachers? Or
No,
just...
those were just other parents.
Okay.
That had kind of...
And did you get reprimanded, called into the principal's office?
Not.
Did any fallback at all from that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, so now you're going to be a little more bold, right? You're like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah. Which don't change that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yes, I did feel like I was able to then continue to advocate for what needed to happen.
So I wonder why you thought you would lose your job. Because I asked this question because as a school board member, I used to visit schools to hear from teachers. We have almost 100 schools in my county, and I can't remember how many were in my district, 30 or something. But I would try, annually, if not quarterly, to get around, just set up a day, sit in the teacher's lounge and say, school board member here, come by, chat, tell me what your concerns are, what we're doing good, what we're not doing well. And often, not just once, but often, they would come in with 2 or 3 other teachers, or, the principal would stop by, but teachers often, again, would get the big eyes. Like, I'd be like, how's everything going? Everything's going great. Almost like hostages, like,
Right.
why are you looking at me like that? They're trying to send me ESP messages. Like their words are saying things are great. We're doing this well. Their facial expressions were not. And sometimes they would slip me notes. Like they would be looking at me going, yeah, this is the greatest school ever. And they would slip me a note. I'm like, what are they doing? I go look at the note after, and it would say, I'm not free to speak. I'm afraid I'll lose my job if I tell you the truth of what's going on. So there's a culture of fear. And as I met with other teachers and school board members in different districts, this is common through education.
It is.
And so I want to know, was there a reason for you to be afraid, or is it just this culture of teachers that they feel like they can't speak up in their schools?
I think it's a culture. I think it's just a culture that has permeated our profession, that we have to maintain this composure, that everything's good, everything's okay. And I just felt like,
why is it like that? Because it's just coming to me right now, but maybe that's why education's so broken. Nobody's willing to say this isn't working. I mean, you're the professionals, you're the ones with the eyes on it. And if everyone has to go, oh, it's all so wonderful, who's going to tell us it's broken?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting mad thinking about it.
Yeah. I don't know why we feel like that. I don't know if, and maybe it's just, the generation before us, the teachers, it was so different. I mean, when I first started teaching in 1999, it was so different. And
how so?
Well, I mean, let's just be honest. We were so focused on academics. I mean, that really was what we were doing. We were doing academics, and now we have all these other things we have to do, right? Everything there's just all these other tasks,
other things
that kind of keep us with all the paperwork. Paperwork.
Well, you're a special education teacher too, right, so you have like additional, right?
I do. But it just
you have
seems
contained
like
classes in your district.
We have direct instruction, so we offer. We don't have self-contained, but we have students that can come to the classroom for direct instruction. A lot of people think that's the old model. That's another thing. That's another misconception. There's another misconception that it's better if we have every kid out for everything, and that doesn't always work. We have students who don't have confidence in their academic skills, and if I can bring them in and we can actually teach them in a kind of more small group setting, my goodness, we build the confidence and they make such gains. But we have just this misconception that every one size fits all. Everybody does the same thing. And that's not even special education, right?
Right.
Special education is supposed to be individualized for the student.
IEP.
Individual
plan.
Yeah. But as far as why I felt like that, kind of circling back to why I felt like that could be, where I lose my job.
Yeah.
I think it comes more out of the fear that we're not supposed to show anything has gone wrong, right? We're not supposed to.
Yeah. So here, teachers, we're counting on you. We're counting on you to be bold, like Paula. We're counting on you to stand up, to talk about what's happening in the schools, the curriculum you see that's concerning. And if you just can't find it in yourself to be bold, or you are in a district where you will really lose your job, contact your Moms for Liberty chapter chair, because we often take things that teachers find and see, and we expose them, and we'll protect you and make sure your name isn't told, because there are districts where I think they do have to still be concerned.
There are. And I think that's the thing that you see on the news too, right? You hear of all the stories of the teachers that are losing their jobs for different things, for speaking up. And we had in Indiana, we had, I think, a guidance counselor who stood up and said that she would not allow students to go by a different pronoun than what they were, than their biological sex. And she lost her job over that. I think there's been a lawsuit since, if I'm not mistaken. But those things, they do happen. And so I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to make sure that I,
didn't lose your job.
Didn't lose my job. But I also felt like I had a responsibility to my children and to my community.
So at some point you move from fighting at the school board level to the famous video. I don't think I knew you at that point, but I saw the video, and someone said, and she's a teacher. I saw you speaking in your state house, I think.
I did.
And someone said, and she's a teacher. And I was like, yes, I loved it. So tell me about that. What was the bill? Were you fearful again of losing your job at this point if you're going to the state house to speak out against something that has to do with education? Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so that was House Bill 1608. And another thing, a side note that I found out, I really like reading legislation.
Oh, that sounds really fun.
I love it. I know I do. I love reading bills. My executive board, they make fun of me because I annotated, I highlighted, I'm
so
looking
great.
for things,
If you ever need a new job, let me know. Our policy guy probably could use some help.
I do. I really enjoy dissecting bills to kind of look at what are they really trying to push through. And let me preface
I hear
this.
that you might be a state legislator in the future. That's your next thing.
Could be.
You could be on the education committee. Sorry,
Could be.
I digress.
No,
go
you're
and tell
good,
me your experience.
Because I just wanted my kids to go to school without wearing masks in quarantine, but I have found over the last 4 years how much more important it is for me to know what is going on, right? I need to be aware of what the process is. So as far as the bill, I didn't know what all of that entailed at the time. I had some sort, right? We all watched Schoolhouse Rocks. I
think everybody mentions that on the show. They're like, every mom is like, all I knew was Schoolhouse Rock, but now I'm annotating bills and dissecting them. So
yeah, and so House Bill 1608, that was in Indiana, that was deemed the equivalent of Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. But that bill merely stated that a student could not try to change their pronouns without parental knowledge. And they moved it from parental consent to parental knowledge.
Oh my gosh, so not even knowledge.
Yeah. So, but I decided that was such an important bill. As an educator, as a parent, I would want, as a parent, I would want to know. And as an educator, I felt that a parent had a right to know if their child was going to school saying, I want to be called by a different pronoun. And so,
hold on. Because I think the president of the biggest teachers union agrees with you. Did you see her comment after the Supreme Court ruling this past week from Mahmoud versus Taylor? Did you see what she said?
I did not see her comment.
Yeah, Randy Weingarten said, teachers should partner with parents. Like, that's what she said on the case after fighting parents tooth and nail the last 5 years.
I would
Anyways,
love to be in a room with Randy for 5 minutes. I'm just going to put that out there because this teacher is not represented by her at all. And so let's sit down for 5 minutes and let's just.
She's coming around, or she's realizing that she's losing so badly she needs to change her tune, which is probably more like it. So you at your core understand that parental rights are
correct,
fundamental,
correct,
and a teacher's role is so important in the child's future. But my goodness, we can work together. And so
correct. And that's what this bill did in Indiana, was make sure that parents were aware of what was happening in their child's life at school. So again, I drafted a speech of what I was going to say in support of House Bill 1608. Had never been to the State House, had never testified at the State House, didn't even know what that process really looked like, had kind of heard, again, through some of the training with Moms for Liberty and some of the meetings that we'd gone through. I thought, okay, I'm ready to tackle this. So I kind of dragged one of my executive board members with me. And we went, and I started testifying on House Bill 1608, and it had to be stopped. My testimony had to be stopped because it was interrupted by all of the hecklers in the balcony. And it was, it's so disrespectful because at no time did I yell, scream, shout over anybody that was opposed to House Bill 1608. But they felt like they had a right to try to shout me out. And so
did it unnerve you, make you nervous? You had to stop because they're shouting at you?
No, because I knew that's what they wanted, right? They want to see you lose your train of thought. They want to see you kind of come undone or come down to their level. And I wasn't about to let that happen because I felt like the testimony was so important for our legislators to hear what really needed to happen in our schools. And I wanted to convey that in such a professional manner that I wasn't about to let those that were in the balcony shout me down.
Did you say you were a teacher in your speech?
I did. I did say that I was a teacher.
Were you worried about losing your job at this point?
I don't think at that point I was. I think I felt pretty confident at that point that, first of all, it wasn't on school time. It was, again, on my own time. And I was there as a parent, as the chapter chair of Moms for Liberty. But I also did say that I was an educator who understands the role of the school and the role of the parent. And I think that's important.
Did the bill pass?
The bill did pass.
And so
yes,
the bill,
it was a good thing that the bill passed.
The bill made sure parents were notified.
Correct.
Great.
Yes. So in the state of Indiana, a parent must be notified if their child wants to go by.
Do you think your voice helped that, or you have no way of knowing, and any feedback you got from that?
I do. I do feel like it did. In fact, one of the authors of the bill, Representative Michelle Davis, who actually was also at the White House for the Title IX executive order.
Wonderful.
That was so crazy. I'm walking down the stairs. This is just a little side note, but I'm walking down the stairs and I look and I'm like, I think that's Representative Davis. And it was. So that was really kind of neat just this past February, because House Bill 1608 was her bill. And so we've kind of had different times. She's not in my district, but it's still been neat to watch her work and then see how that kind of comes full circle. But she said, thank you for coming and testifying, because the irony of it all is we had educators in that room who were testifying against the bill, who were testifying to keep that information from parents. And I thought, that's such an embarrassment to our profession. That's not what we're there for.
Let's get you in a room with Randy. I really do think that would be a good idea.
And then, but the state police had to escort people out of the floor because of how disrespectful they were during my testimony. And I don't think I really understood the gravity of what was at stake until I had some state representatives come up afterwards and offer to escort my other executive board member and myself back out to our cars and even say, we're carrying. And I thought that never even dawned on me that I needed to be concerned about my safety and well-being, because I just thought I was doing what was right. And I guess I don't think about, why would somebody think that it's okay to harm me because they disagree with me?
Well, we know now the trans activists are, they're terrifying. I don't know what else to say. They show up at all of these bill hearings and votes and the capitals, and they carry on. And we are learning more and more how dangerous, how far they are willing to go. So I'm glad you had an escort. So you've received hate just like every other chapter chair of Moms for Liberty in the United States of America. Any other hate that you want to comment on? Sometimes these are the most interesting stories to share.
Yeah,
so.
We had our first protester at the 4-H fair last year with a white poster board with red lettering on it, protesting our booth at the 4-H fair. I mean,
just one
lone protester. So, I had a candidate for office come, this has been a few years ago, come and try to talk about how much we didn't know about teachers. This was irony at its finest. She
obviously didn't know you were a teacher.
She didn't know, and I didn't disclose that. And as we were going through, she would throw out what she thought was a statistic, and I would be able to kind of correct her in that and say, well, that's actually not true. And, at the end of that conversation, she's laid her stuff down and she said, I'm coming for you. And I thought, what? Again, we're having a conversation, but when you don't win the conversation, then you kind of
you resort to an empty threat, basically. It's ridiculous.
So, we've had that. We've had minor things here and there, friendships and relationships and things like that have been compromised, and that's hurtful. But, at the end of the day, my kids are watching, right? And so my kids are watching for my lead, and it's my responsibility to show them what is right, what is wrong, and to stand up even under the pressure of maybe having relationships that cease to exist.
Again, courageous. I think I have a lot of words to describe you today. Let's talk a little bit to other chapter chairs right now. How have you kept your chapter going? What are some of your highlights, some of the things you're most proud of that your chapter as a whole has been successful at?
So building an executive board, that's key. I have just some phenomenal board members, and I will just touch on, I know Joyful Warrior, right? That's our tag. And just to kind of give you a little story, that I wasn't feeling so joyful a couple months ago. We were tackling a situation with a district, and I've been very frustrated with, we keep coming back, right? This comes up, and we keep having to go back to this district. In this particular situation, I was not feeling so joyful. And I texted out to the executive board, I'm not feeling very joyful. Would anybody else like to take this? And I had another executive board member who stepped up and said, I've got it. I'll take it. And she did. And she finished that out and got the result that we wanted. And so I think that's key right there, is having that
you're not alone.
We're not all alone. We're going through, we're going the same direction, the same goal, the same mission in mind, and that we keep the focus. And so building your executive board is definitely key.
And what are you most proud of you've been 4 years, I'm thinking, right? It's been 4 years of the chapter.
Yes, 4 years this month.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Next year's Moms for Liberty's 5-year anniversary. Very excited about that. We've got big plans.
Yay.
So what, most proud moment? 4 years.
Oh boy, there's so many. I don't know that I could narrow it down to one, because I think again, I know the masks were kind of, everybody's like, oh, we're over the masks kind of thing. But if you look at 2021, when we first started, right? So we had 4 of our 5 districts went to parent decision on masks. We had one district that was kind of holding out. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep the masks in place. And it was, so for 30 days, they kept the masks in place. And at that next school board meeting, the pressure was mounting. Parents were showing up. The room was full for that board meeting. And they went ahead and said, they took a vote and they went to parent choice on masks. So they were our last district. And I remember that same board member she decided to be the joyful warrior for me a couple months ago. That was at her son's school. And I remember her saying that she got to go home to her son and tell him, tomorrow you don't have to wear a mask. And why it seems so small, I think that was the moment we felt kind of vindicated, like our voice matters and what we're doing matters. And since then, I mean, we've had everything from sexually explicit materials removed. We've had House Bill 1608, learning how to work with all of our elected officials. I think, we've had parents come to us. That's the other thing is and I think you and I talked about this earlier, there are certain events that we will hold that, we might have 50, 60 people show up for. And then the next month, we might have 3 of us in the room for the monthly meeting. But then at the end of the day, when something happens in the community, they know who to go to. And people say, you need to get a hold of Moms for Liberty in Howard County. And we had that a couple of times this year already. And one was a district that was going to take a child out of Head Start because they didn't have the right vaccination status. And, we went ahead and worked with that parent and helped her because she didn't want to have her child vaccinated with those certain vaccines. And not that we're anti-vaccine, but we are pro-parent choice. And if the parent decides they don't want their child vaccinated, then we help with helping them navigate that.
Yeah, our mission statement is to unify, educate, and empower parents. And so whatever the parent wants at that point, you want to help empower them, give them the tools, the resources, the language so that they can advocate for their children effectively. And that's all Moms for Liberty is about. All of this other nonsense that people try to label us and tag us as, that's not who we are. And you know that. And you're such a good example of that. So I'm going to close with 2 questions.
Okay.
1, what does it mean to be a joyful warrior to you?
So I think I touched on that a little bit before. A joyful warrior is somebody, a lot of times when you have a disagreement with somebody, it can be easy to rise to a level of bright shouting, screaming. And I won't do that. If we have a disagreement, we can talk through that, but I'm not going to shout you out. I'm not going to shout you down. We're going to have a conversation, a civil conversation, or we don't have a conversation at all. I think it's that. I think it's being positive. I think it is working with the districts and not putting them on blast. The goal isn't to make all of our schools feel, like we're under a microscope and trying to put them out on social media so that everybody hates them
But we are watching.
We are watching. But I think as a joyful warrior, we go in and build those relationships to say, I want to work with you. I want to help your school become the best it can be academically. That's our main goal, right, is academics. And so as a joyful warrior, holding yourself professionally is key with that. And when you don't feel so joyful is knowing when to stop and say, I'm going to let somebody else handle this because I may not handle it in the right way.
It's important. That is a very important part of being a joyful warrior. And then last but not least, your why. Why 4 years into this are you still going?
Yeah. So my why is my children first and foremost. That was my start. That was the catalyst. But why do I continue? Because we have to stay one step ahead. As I've watched things come up, over the last 4 years. Again, 6 years ago, if you would have told me what was coming into our schools, I would have been like, what? That's not going to happen. And now I see what they, right? They want. They're after our kids. And if they can break down the family unit, if they can get to our kids, then we're in trouble. And I don't want that to happen. And so I feel a sense of responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so as much as I would love to just kind of sit back, I've wrestled with that before, how much more do you do? I feel like I can't stop. I have to stay a step ahead. I have to stay vigilant. I have to know what's coming next so then I can prepare.
And I would say there's no better frontline warrior than a mom and a public school teacher and a chapter chair of Moms for Liberty. You are the perfect combination of a frontline warrior because you have everything in front of you to be alert and aware of. You have the ability and the training and the professionalism to combat it. And so we are very blessed to have you. I hope more teachers will see this and step up and also become part of the organization. We have lots of teachers that are members. Some of them are just not quite as vocal because they haven't found their boldness yet, but we're thankful for them. And we're thankful that you joined us today. This is Paula Davis from Howard County, Indiana, our chapter chair, our 2024 Abigail Adams Award winner last year. And she's a mom of 3 and a public school special education teacher. And this is the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. We are grateful that you joined us today. We hope you'll give us a follow on Apple and Spotify or YouTube and Rumble. You can watch live on all of our social media, of course, and over on Apple and Spotify. Give us 5 stars and leave a good comment for us too. Until next week.